From outright opposition to limited approval, President Tinubu's student loan scheme has been met with diverse reactions from Nigerians. But the presidency insists that its position is well intended to improve Nigeria's education system. What are the chances of this scheme living to its potential? And how accessible is this scheme for Nigerian students all over the country? I am Adewale Olashukbo, and you're watching The Steam. Today, to discuss this issue, I'm joined by Comrade Abdullahi Bilal, a member of Activista Nigeria and a human rights activist. Welcome to the program, Bilal.
Thank you.
So, Bilal, during the campaign trail, President Tinubu campaigned that he was going to provide student loan for students all across tertiary institutions in Nigeria. And a lot of people are aware of his plans and voted for him. And this is a plan that he's implementing. That means he's fulfilling his promises for Nigerians. So why do Nigerians have a position against this student loan scheme?
The question of the student loan scheme is not the will of the Nigerian people. Though, if you said a lot of people voted for him as a result of his campaign manifesto, so the majority votes just as a result of course, the court ruled that he is the president, even though this is not the the conversation for the day, whether or not he won the election. But then, the question of the student loan scheme, for me, is of course the student loan policy itself is a scam. It is a deliberate attempt to put education in the market. It is an attempt to commercialize public education and price education out of the reach of the mass of the working people. To people who supported the student loan scheme are saying, of course, are putting the position forward that it is going to resolve the crisis of access to higher education. But the truth of the matter is that is a lie. The country do not have enough resources to fund public education or to make public education accessible, affordable, and qualitative to young people or to people who desires education is a lie. The country have enough resources to fund public education, to make public education accessible and affordable. And of course, if you look at the provision of the loan, the passing of the bringing up of that policy is just government trying to shy away from its responsibility. The Nigerian Constitution, 1999 as amended, refers to education as a social responsibility. And Section 18, subsection 1 of the Nigerian Constitution, 1999 Constitution as amended, state that government should direct its policy towards ensuring adequate and a proper education for all people. And going forward in that section, you will see where they put free university education, but though they put as at when practicable. But no government from 1999 till date has been able to meet up to the UNESCO benchmark of 15 to 20% for the developing nation like ours. I think the highest we had was during Jonathan's regime, which is 7 point something. Not that we are sending our comments to Jonathan for anything.
I think it's undeniable that education is in fact a priority for any country in the world, and Nigeria inclusive. But we must also understand a lot of people have had that conversation that UNESCO said they should have at least 15% or 20%. But the Nigerian government has come out for a certain period of, for one time has come out to say that there is no law anywhere that is binding them. It is non-binding, whether this is given by the UNESCO for us to improve or give a percentage of resources towards education. That is not a given law, but that is not even the conversation right now. The conversation is tilting towards the student loan in the country. And we must agree that the federal government cannot alone take up all the responsibility to fund qualitative education in Nigeria. Look at the number of our citizens. We have over 200 million people, and we have tens of millions going into the university and passing out every year. So how then do you think the government can sustain this without this program?
Well, if you look at the program, and even in the last, the appropriation bill, just 50 billion naira was then marked for this project. 50 billion naira. And according to Statista, we have 91 public universities in Nigeria with an average of 1.2 million Nigerian students. This is excluding those at polytechnic and, of course, colleges of education. Okay, let's just assume that we have 1 million each. So, do you mean that 50 billion a mark for the student loan bill would be able to resolve the crisis of 3.2 million Nigerian students, or we have, of course, more than 40.1 million Nigerians schooling in Nigeria and, of course, in the diaspora. And just 50 billion naira was a mark. And that's why I told you that the student loan scheme is a deliberate attempt. Government want to shy away from funding public education so that they will tell you that if you cannot be able to access education, they will tell you that we have a provision for loan for you there. Go and access this loan. And the truth of the matter is that even that amount is so minute. It's just like throwing a spittle in a raging inferno, because it cannot respond to the population. At the end of the day, very few people, less than 10% of Nigerian students will have access to that loan scheme. So if government really wants to make this accessible, at least instead of 50 billion a mark for it, they should be looking around 360 billion.
And the government is responding to that. Recently, the bill was recalled at the National Assembly, and the president reenacted a new bill and proposed a new one to the National Assembly so that they would have a lot of modification to do to it. Some of the modification that has been done to this law, if you would allow me to educate you on that, is that fees now payable to school. The government has provided fees that can be payable to the school, and also remuneration for maintenance of allowances for students as well. Also, student beneficiaries will have to pay when they start working. The 2-year gap that has been given after the NYSC has been taken away. Also, family with a lot of things has to be taken into consideration for students to be able to repay. For instance, people that are perhaps disabled or for circumstances such as death, they would have to take that into consideration. The student loan scheme is also a favor both to the government and to the students. We can see that a lot of young Nigerians are pulling out, to use the Nigerian words, dropping out of universities because they cannot afford their tuition fees. And the government providing this loan for the students will be able to allow students to complete their education at the right time. And also, I think it would help ASU as well to stop them from having to go on strike and all of that. But you have another opinion to say this project is a scam.
Well, Adewale, when you say that it's a win-win situation for the students and the government, for the students, I will disagree with that, backing up with with points. But then for the government, I think, yes, it's a win-win for them. Since this is just an attempt to them to, instead of, we are not longer funding public education. So it means that students can, if you are unable to access the loan, you can remain at home. And then you don't hold government to their responsibility of saying their provision of education, which is part of in the social contract, which is improving of the standard of living of the entirety of the mass of the working people, which education is a social responsibility under that.
But you cannot say that they are not funding education when this loan is being provided by the government themselves.
Adewale, this is not the first time that the Nigerian government is introducing the student loan scheme.
Exactly.
If you go back to the 1970s,
exactly,
there is, of course, the Nigerian student loan decree that was promulgated by the military government then. But it was fizzled out. Reason being that it was marred with corruption and huge of indebtedness. Even stronger countries like the United States, it becomes a tool of campaign for them. And then you could see that in 2020 to 2023, Biden have to freeze the payment of the student loan. The reason being that even after graduation, students it is very difficult for them to gain employment and even be able to commence the payment of the loan. In 2022, Joe Biden had to pass a law that there should be loan forgiveness. In Britain, students 40 years after graduation are still indebted. So if powerful countries of the world that, of course, their human capital index is high, is struggling with such loan, how, of course, do we expect a third world country marred with corruption, that more than 133 million Nigerians are living in multidimensional poverty? How did you expect such a scheme to fly?
This, I think it's an imbalanced comparison that you're comparing Nigeria to the United Kingdom or to the United States. These are developed economies. These are economies that have been able to prioritize education for hundreds. These are countries that have existed. Nigeria is just how old? And you're comparing us to countries like the United States and the United Kingdom that have a system in place that has worked over the years. So I think you mentioning that this student loan scheme has been introduced. Of course, it has been introduced in previous military government administration in Nigeria, and they failed. But we have a new administration. We have a new dispensation right now, and this is an administration that has touted itself as to be against corruption in the country. Okay. So when they want to do this, we've seen them do it with the fuel subsidy in Nigeria. President Tinubu came in and said the fuel subsidy is gone. Yeah. He stands by his decision. This is a man who people voted for because he has his words and he follows them to the latter. So how would you then criticize it when you haven't even let it materialize?
Well, I think the anti-poor people regime the Tinubu administration has come up with to achieve.
That is a very strong statement. That
yes, but they are anti-poor people. They are anti-poor people policies.
How can it be anti-poor when it is saving people from
It is not saving people. A pure water in Abuja now is close to 15 naira per one. So and then how do you say that those are the essence of people voting is to ensure that their lives are better. So moving away from the subsidy regime, maybe we can have that conversation from another day on the. Let's come back to the student loan. You are saying Nigeria is still very young. But then in COP28 recently, the country had 400 delegates.
That is another conversation. That is another conversation.
I'm trying to give you a kind of a linkage of how resources have been wasted. It's not as though the resources are not there to make public education accessible. It is because these resources are not democratically managed. 3 billion. This is we are numbers of poor people. 3 billion naira was used to fund such a trip to COP29, and then recently in the appropriation bill, just to feed animals in Aso Rock, we are looking around 201 million. And then the president trips and the vice president, the food they will eat in just 2024 alone, they are looking around 10 billion plus. And then now you are talking about that Nigeria is a very poor country, or a country that is growing, does not have this capacity to fund all of this luxurious lifestyle that they are living.
Not to speak in the government's favor, but to set the record straight, Nigeria was not the only person that had one of the largest delegates to the COP26. And mind you, the government
was
Nigeria was...
Who are other countries? Who are other third world countries that have that large delegation?
Nigeria was not the one that paid for all the people that attended.
So who paid the 3 billion was from the coffers of government?
It wasn't entirely from the coffers of the nation.
So where was the money from?
The Nigerian government had their logistics facilitated by them, some of them, and some other people were self-funded to represent Nigeria in that event. So that's on another side. But you also mentioned that the Nigerian government is appropriated billions of naira to feed people. This is not only the president that is being fed. You have workers at the State House, you have visitors coming. They have to be represented. Nigeria has to be represented in the good light. But coming back to the conversation of the student loan, you might have this position about it, but I think another organization which is very paramount to the education system in Nigeria that is also tilting towards your own idea is ASU. They said the loan scheme is a way of starving public universities of funding and a ploy to divert public funds into private university owned by politically exposed individuals. But would you not agree with me as well that these people are also speaking for themselves?
No. ASU are not speaking for themselves. Reason being that I may not get the numbers of strike in the last 10 years, but in the last 10 years, Nigerian universities have gone on strike for over 4 years. 10 years.
But most of their agenda are for themselves.
It's not for themselves. It's for these funds to be injected into the system. And then if government wants that if they do not have money to fund public education, they can look around. There are a whole lot of multinational corporations that have been given tax waivers for years. They can look around their salaries. They can look around the jumbo salaries and allowances for public office holders. And then at the end of the day, not casting aspersion, but what do they use this money for? The education is the powerful, of course, weapon that you can use to change the world. And then the question you are going to ask yourself is that, how many members of the Billionaires Club or how many children of the ruling class in Nigeria have their children in public education? And which member of the ruling class currently, the president, the ministers, and of course every elected public officers that has not enjoyed subsidized education or enjoyed free education at some point while growing up? Why should my own generation and the generation coming on board must go to school on credit?
You would agree that we have, as a government in Nigeria, of course, our responsibility is to fund education, which is paramount for the country. But as well, we cannot deny that Nigeria has different responsibilities, which is education, we have health, we have insecurity, we have food security issues to deal with in Nigeria. And if the government can see that, okay, how can we mitigate all these issues? How can we spread our resources? You've mentioned that the government is not, the government is not adjudicating the resources the way they should. The federal government of Nigeria, this administration that you're criticizing again, has implemented the Oronsaye report. So this Oronsaye report has been passed from the administration of Jonathan to Buhari, and now we have Tinubu implementing it. How can we merge different parastatals that are not even working? How can we merge them together? How can we remove some that are not even fulfilling the responsibility that they should feel? So the government are looking for ways to mitigate these issues and how to cut down cost and how to cut down cost of governance. Also, another group that might disagree with you is the National Association of the Nigerian Students. If this conversation is about the student, we've had people from ASU give their opinion. We have Nigerians give their opinion. But the most important people that is critical for them is the National Association of the Nigerian Students. And they've responded back to ASU. ASU complained that this is a way to defund Nigerian universities. And we have NANS come out to say that students across the nation are calling on ASU to refrain from interfering in matters concerning the student loan program. Contrary to ASU's assertion, students are not only supportive of the program, but are actively advocating for its implementation. You, on one hand, you are not currently a student in any Nigerian institution right now, while we have these people that are in coordination of how students engage themselves and are in support of this scheme. So why would you take painkillers for the pain of another person while they are telling you they are not feeling any pain at all?
From the last one, the Oronsaye report you called, I think that is throwing spittle on a raging inferno itself. Because, I mean, merging all of this parastatal is good, but a 30,000 minimum wage will not be cutting costs.
But that's a conversation the government is still having.
A 30,000 naira minimum wage will not be cutting any costs. If the government is genuinely wants to cut costs and source funds to fund public education, it should start it from itself. In the 2023 budget, 13.5 billion naira was approved for the renovation of the president and the vice president residence. And then in the appropriation bill, another 800 billion was 800 million, so to say, was approved just recently. Now you're looking around civil servants who their salary barely covers the people that are living on a minimum wage instead of a living wage. And then we already have about the unemployment rate around 42%, and then you are saying you are still going to close out, and a lot of people are still going to lose their jobs and join. And we already have a country whereby out of the 36 states of the federation, all of these states have been affected by one security threat or the other as a result of the rising unemployment and of course hunger in the lands. And you are joining another section of the working class to join these people alone, and yet somebody from the House of Reps came out and saying that the 9 million naira salary and then the 800,000 naira attached to that 9 million naira is not enough for them to take home a month. So if you want to cut down salary,
governance in Nigeria we are going to say, but I want you to respond.
This is just a linkage.
I want you to respond.
We are coming down. You raised 3 points. You have raised 3 points, okay, which is the report, of course, of which I'm responding to you. That the report, if you like, sack all of the workers in Nigeria, leave the space to them. It's not, but the amount of salary is a peanut compared to what one single public officer either in the Senate or the House of Reps is.
I think that's a conversation Nigerians are having.
Now, the question of if you want the resources.
That is a conversation Nigerians
are having. You raised 3 questions. But we cannot
deny that if we close down all these parastatals and departments.
I'm just citing an instance.
You're sending other people out of the system.
I am just citing an instance that I'm coming to NAS.
Okay.
I'm just responding to you that you maybe reducing some of these workers will help make money. I will tell you that reducing most of these workers will only add to the 133 millions already living in multidimensional poverty.
You've made your point.
Now, coming to NANS, what is NANS? Who is NANS? What are the activities of NANS? I have attended several NANS conventions across states. In fact, the recent was in the FCT. I ran for my life. Nigerian students exchanging guns, shooting sporadically, and then there is no successive NANS convention that the states, I do not want to mention name, but two powerful people funded two candidates. And at the end of the day, the candidate of the states.
Do you have the data to back it? Because this seems like a very heavy allegations against
I have, of course, yes. I am a member of NANS.
You are a member of NANS?
When I was a student. I am part of the NANS.
And judging from what you're doing now as an activist, you were in a position where you could have made changes in an association where you criticize now. What do you do differently?
We are not criticizing NANS. We are making our contribution that NANS should respond to the yearnings and aspirations of Nigerian students. But NANS of today, the NANS of today,
but
of course, the NANS of today, yeah, they are recognized body because they are side by side. They are side by side with the members of the ruling class. And then you cannot be a successful NANS president without having support of the state. Just like if you go back to it, even in the universities, before an SUG president emerged in most of the campuses, it must have to be the management that produces him. So that if the university wants to introduce any anti-student policy, you see that the only thing that president could do is to engage students that they should not revolt against the school. Either there's increment in fee, no hostel, no water across campuses and the like. We are product of the public universities ourselves. And then coming to NANS, we will tell you that if NANS is responding to the genuine concern of Nigerian students, their interest should be that government should make public education accessible and affordable. Looking at the country that we are, a very rich country, that we have the resources to fund public education, rather than coming with a scam that is referred to as the Nigerian student loan policy. For we, it's an attempt to price education out of the children of the poor.
Opinion heard, and I do not want to defend the government by saying I disagree with you that it is a scam, but I think it's left to Nigerians to watch and see how this is going to be implemented. There's still a lot of things to iron out with the system. It's still at the National Assembly being deliberated. It has passed the second reading, and we're looking forward to all the amendments that are going to be made with the bill. But also Nigerians are expecting a lot of things from this administration, whether we agree with the administration in one way or another or not, whether we believe them to be in the government or not, they still are in power, and the responsibility rests on their shoulder to make sure that education is prioritized in Nigeria, whether through the student loan, whether through other means. Education has to be prioritized and put in place. Thank you very much, Abdullahi Bilal, for joining me today on the steam. The conversation has been steamed.
Thank you.
The conversation has been great so far. Thank you very much. And I think it's left to you Nigerians to speak to your representatives wherever they are in their respective constituents. It's important that you reach out to them, deliberate with them, and give them your opinion on what you want them to implement and what you want them to change or what you want them to amend with this student loan scheme that is being put forward to the National Assembly for our reenactment. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. I am Adewale Olashukwu. You can join the conversation on all our social media platforms where you can share your ideas with us while we look at it and see what we can improve. I remain Adewale Olashukwu. And until next time, bye for now.